All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I wanted to share this is about a 3-minute video. It kind of gives you a little bit of an introduction to the Bay and to Bay Alive, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it after.
The San Francisco Bay. You've walked its shores and you've breathed in its beauty. But beyond the beauty of the bay, did you know that we all depend on our bay? Our bay ecology cleans our water of pollution, removing nitrogen, heavy metals, harmful wastes, and toxins. Our shoreline plants are more effective at absorbing carbon than even tropical rainforests, and our sponge-like marshes soak up huge amounts of storm, flood, and tidal water. The powerful energy of waves hitting the shore are buffered and dispersed by our wetlands. And our shallow bay waters, our tidal marshes, and mudflats are home and nursery for millions of plants and animals which make up our complex ecosystem. Millions of native and migrating birds feast on the banquet provided by our bay, and you depend upon it for shelter and safe passage. And our eelgrass meadows and marshes act as lungs of the bay, a tremendous source of fresh air and oxygen for us all. It's easy to take for granted how much we depend upon these ecosystem services, and they'll only become more essential as climate change worsens and our communities grow. Now, the threat of sea level rise requires that we participate to protect our bay, and today there are many threats. There's ill-considered shoreline developments, there are seawalls and levees turning living green shorelines into dead edges, and sea level rise can drown out our existing marshes and flood into ill-prepared lands. Mobilization of legacy toxins in our soil is also an issue due to impending groundwater rise. Fortunately, under a new state law, all 47 towns and cities in the Bay are required to start planning for sea level rise. Will each of these communities protect our existing marshes and wetlands, or will they ignore and undermine all of the environmental benefits that wetlands give us? The San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission, or BCDC, has been given new authority to approve or deny these plans and is hard at work right now developing coordinated region-wide guidelines by the end of this year. Every Bay shoreline community will have to follow those guidelines, so the impacts will be Bay-wide and will last for decades to come. BCDC is accepting public input right now, and you have an unprecedented chance to get your values incorporated into response to sea level rise. Climate change can be overwhelming. It really is rare that we have an opportunity as individuals to make an impact on our future, but now is one of these times. You can make a difference. The Sierra Club's Bay Alive campaign is here to help. Join the campaign today and show policymakers that you care about keeping the San Francisco Bay alive.
So that was Dash Leeds. He's our conservation coordinator and that was the video was actually made by Sheila Brady, one of our Bay Alive volunteers. And so I want to talk a little bit more, go into a little bit more depth about what we've done at Bay Alive since we started about 5 years ago, and what was alluded to in the video about the new law that has just been passed. So Bay Alive really was started to preserve and enhance San Francisco Bay about 5 years ago, the living shoreline, and to strengthen community resilience in the face of sea level rise. So we've really done a lot of work on the advocacy side and a lot of work on the educational side. On the advocacy side, and I'm speaking within Loma Prieta, which is Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. We've done a lot of advocacy on developments, shoreline developments. For example, Moffett Park Specific Plan, which is a plan in Sunnyvale to change the industrial area of Moffett Park into a mixed use area. And that's right on the ocean. That's going to be affected by sea level rise. There's toxics there. So we were very involved in that. Also in the Ravenswood Business District specific plan, which is East Palo Alto again. It's redeveloping an industrial area into a mixed use area. And again, there's legacy contaminants there. So we've been very involved in that. We've been involved in One Shoreline, which is the San Mateo County Shoreline Resiliency Agency. and the Safer Bay levee system, which is um, proposed south of San Mateo County. And what we're really trying to do is to make sure that there is a regional approach to sea level rise, that each city isn't trying to solve the problem themselves, and that when we look to that we look to nature and nature-based solutions uh, as our first choice in planning for sea level rise. And then we acknowledge that not just in our own area in Loma Prieta, but around the bay, a lot of the worst contamination sites are old industrial sites in very vulnerable communities. And so we want to promote environmental justice as well. So back to BCDC. So prior to December of last year, well, BCDC really got its start in the mid 60s when cities were filling in the bay to make more room for more development, and a lot of dumping was going on different parts of the shoreline as well. There was a very important effort, and that's how Save the Bay got started, and to put a halt on that bay fill. And besides that, they also develop policies to maintain coastal access for people. They also are required you're required to get a permit if you're within 100 feet of the bay shoreline. And they have been responsible since 2008 for preparing the Bay Area for resiliency with rising sea levels, but they really had no authority to do so until recently. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. And they have board members, and so we in the last year have appealed quite a bit to different board members, and a lot of these are city and county appointees that already sit on city councils in our area. So what's happened in the last year is the Senate Bill 272 was passed a little over a year ago. It was proposed by Senator Laird of Santa Cruz, and basically what it said was every community along both the coast and the bay shoreline are responsible are need to come up with a shoreline resiliency plan, and it's BCDC's responsibility for the bay communities to develop the requirements for that plan. On the coast, it's the Coastal Commission. And so this is a big deal because this is the first time there's acknowledgement that there needs to be a regional organization involved in planning for sea level rise. And so BCDC got that authority a year ago, and they were charged with developing this regional shoreline adaptation plan guidelines last year, and those were developed last year and signed on by BCDC's board. So this is a really pivotal moment because now there is an organization that's responsible, and so they have the ability to either deny or adopt different different plans that are produced by cities, counties, and it's kind of left a little bit open whether cities can work together in regional groups, counties can work together, or counties can work within themselves, but there's a need to create these shoreline adaptation plans by 2034. And so that gives these excuse me, agencies 10 years to do it. But the hope is that there is a lot of interaction with BCDC during that process. But it's a really key time because citizens can play a really important role if they know about this, they know it's coming, and they can hold cities, counties, and these regional groups accountable for developing responsible plans. So just looking at the sea level rise guidance a little bit, every 5 years, the Ocean Protection Council comes up with guidance on sea level rise. So the last guidance came out last year. And again, it's up to, and there is a plus or minus to these, but at least 1.2 feet by 2050, 3 feet by 2070, and 6.6 feet by 2100. And then on the left side, there's a graphic, and this is from SFEI's San Francisco Estuary Institute's Adaptation Atlas. And what it does is it divides the whole Bay Area into 40 different operational landscape units. And it's showing what the effects of different amounts of sea level rise with a 100-year storm would result in inundation. And so I'm not going to go over the numbers here, but I will come back to talk about that at the adaptation atlas. So what are the threats? So obvious threat is flooding from sea level rise. And we've already seen this a lot of places, both on the coast and in the bay. And the last year, the Sierra Club had 3 people pretty much embedded in BCDC working on influencing the requirements of the regional shoreline adaptation plan guidelines and in brainstorming how to do implementation. So the threats are again sea level rise. What a lot of people don't realize is that when the sea levels rise, it pushes up groundwater, and I've got a nice graphic to come to after this slide. There's also the environmental injustice, as I mentioned before. We're also worried that as the bay gets deeper, if the shallow habitats flood and flood perpetually, then we're going to lose biodiversity. We're going to lose quite a bit of life that exists in the bay. And then there's a critical ecosystem services that the bay provides, such as cleaning and filtering the water. It modulates our climate around the bay. It sequesters vast amounts of carbon in the marshes and in the eelgrasses and things like that. Provides economic benefits, the fisheries there, and then recreational benefits as well. And so this is another video that it's only a few minutes long. It developed by Sheila Brady to try to help people understand why are we worried about groundwater rise as the sea levels rise on the bayshore.
Remember back to those good old days when the sea just rose and fell with the tides? Now and then there would be a big storm, but it would pass and everything would go back to normal. Well, climate change is making those storms bigger and wetter, and it is already causing sea level rise. You would think that we can just build levees and seawalls, and that would keep the sea out of our lands. But it isn't so easy. Below the surface of the land are vast reservoirs of groundwater. Groundwater is rainwater that has soaked into the ground over many, many years. Seawater also seeps into the ground under the sea floor. Seawater is salty and is heavier than groundwater. At the shoreline, where the two waters collide under the surface of the land, the seawater stays under the groundwater. So when the sea rises, not only does water flood across the beaches, mudflats, wetlands, and our communities, but under the surface, the seawater also pushes up the groundwater, contributing to more surface flooding and wreaking havoc underground where we can't see it. So in spite of the levees which we build to protect us from sea level rise, the saltwater can move under the levees, pushing up the groundwater, causing a number of problems on what we thought was dry land. Our creeks and low-lying lands can be flooded, as well as our gray infrastructure, our roads, parking lots, and basements of buildings. Water-soaked electrical systems could fail. Water seeping into cracked sewer pipes can drown our wastewater systems, which weren't designed to carry that kind of load. And this can cause an overflow of untreated water into the environment. There are hundreds of contaminated industrial sites, landfills, and old dumps on the shores of San Francisco Bay, where the cleanup or containment strategies may not stand up to the new threat of groundwater rise. Many of these old toxic dumps were covered with a cement or clay surface and simply left in place. Some have even been built upon. It was thought that if the cap was well built, this was a safe practice, but groundwater rise challenges that assumption. When groundwater flows under the surface caps of the old dumps, the toxins which were inert when capped in dry soil can move and spread as the groundwater moves and spreads in the soil. These toxins, many of which are known poisons like mercury, chromium, oil and gas products, lead, etc., can end up in our streets, in our backyards, in our basements, and in our bay, sickening our people and the animals and plants that support our healthy ecology. That would be catastrophic. And unfairly, most of these sites are in communities that have the fewest resources to deal with this problem. Getting involved and taking action is easier than you think. We know the seas are rising, and the time to join together is now to help all communities assess and start cleaning up toxic sites. Join the Sierra Club's Bay Alive campaign to help protect our bay from these effects of groundwater rise.
So I just wanted to mention one other thing. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to start from the beginning. Sorry. I can't figure out how to stop the video without
Never mind. It's boring.
so
You can go to the word slide next to format and or no, onto view. Go to view and slideshow, and it'll start from where you are. Slideshow. Slideshow. Up.
got it.
Oops.
Oh
dear. Just go to view and go to slideshow, and it should start right on that slide.
Okay, sorry about that. One thing I didn't mention on that last slide, about obviously the threats to sea level rise is you also threaten the soil stability itself, and we often get subsidence. And you can also get liquefaction, which is really an instability if there's any kind of a seismic event that is very worrisome because of the there's so much development right on the shore that really undermines that foundations and things like that. So anyways, so back to the adaptation plans. Really coming back to the issue of they need to level the playing field between communities that have a lot of empowerment and funding and communities that don't. And so what we want to make sure that in our advocacy that they incorporate shallow groundwater rise into planning and adaptation decisions, that toxic sites are cleaned up and we avoid any kind of mobilization of toxics as sea levels rise and groundwater rises, and that we prioritize the communities for access to resources and technical assistance in making these plans. And in addition to flood mitigation, we help protect their natural public assets on the shoreline. So coming back to the adaptation atlas, this was developed in 2019 by the San Francisco Estuary Institute. And I showed you how it divided up the whole bay into 30 different segments based on their geomorphology. And it suggests nature-based solutions that are likely to work in those different areas. And so what we're really concerned with is if you just armor the shorelines, you put up seawalls and you put up steep levees, that the shallow ecosystem will drown and will lose a lot of those the ecosystem services that they provide. They also help, are going to help protect the communities. A lot of times the nature-based solutions will basically use up a lot of the wave energy before it reaches the shore and attenuate the energy in the waves. And so if you are going to have to build a levee, you can get away with building a shorter levee. But we really want to be careful not to overdevelop the shoreline or harden or just put in hard infrastructure. So I'll introduce you to nature-based solutions, and Geeta will take this to a little more detail. So a lot of things, there is a lot of eelgrass, especially in the North Bay. That does a really great job of attenuating the energy in waves and also filtering the water, also sequestering carbon. Also, the eelgrass in the marshes will help sedimentation processes occur. And so then the base, the bottom of the bay can build up over time with the sediment that naturally comes into it. Oysters do a good job of filtering the water. And there's a lot of there's been research done recently introducing the native oysters back into San Francisco Bay, and quite a bit of uh, life in mudflats, even though you wouldn't think it to see them. And so the life in those mudflats needs to stay alive. And then the last thing is a horizontal levee. It's actually considered a hybrid solution because it does involve a man-made or a manufactured levee system. But on the bay side, it's a very gradual slope. These are also often called horizontal levees, where you've got a lot of room for the bay to migrate upland. And there's also some of these near wastewater treatment plants, they're actually releasing the wastewater upstream, and that's what that little thin blue stripe is, in a attempt to even further use the plants on that horizontal levee to further filter the water before it is released to the bay. So what do we want in adaptation plans? We want these to be interconnected. We want them to be coordinated between different areas. We want them to be equitable. We want them to have the vision of what, not just build a seawall and walk away for the next 50 years. We want to have a vision of what you want the bay to look like and the wildlife to persist in the future. And we, obviously ease the burdens on marginalized communities. And then I'll talk a little bit more about adaptive pathways. What this means is, you may not have one and done solutions. You may have a phased approach to solving the sea level rise problems. And so we depend on the healthy shorelines for our own resilience. We talked about some of those ecosystem services. So treat nature as a critical public asset. And I think Geeta's going to mention more about what the Habitat joint venture goals are, is to preserve a certain number of acres of wetlands. And we want to make the most of the resiliency tools that nature provides. We want to insist that wherever possible, nature-based solutions be used, and that we plan for the baylands to migrate. We don't put more infrastructure or construction on the coast of the bay, and we want to keep the bay alive by using nature-based solutions. And so just a little bit about adaptive pathways. And so we want to create maybe a variety of solutions that may be appropriate at different times. And most likely, if we're in 2100, managed retreat is going to be likely the scenario for anything that exists on the bayshore now. So there may be a stepwise process to looking at what these solutions might be over time. And that is my email address. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them now. And like I said, Geeta's going to get can address some of those questions with her slides as well. I'm going to stop sharing.
Hi. Well, thank you,
Any
Susan.
questions now, or should Geeta just jump in and?
No, if there are questions, definitely. Otherwise, we'll continue and then have questions later. And I hope you will all ask questions. I would really appreciate it. Oh, Julie has joined us. Hi, Julie. Nina, are you here? And Julie, do you
Hello.
want to introduce yourself? Oh, Stephen's here. Stephen, go ahead.
Hi, yes, I'm here. Sorry. Nina had to step away.
Go
She's
ahead.
taking care
Stephen
of
and
our poor kitty.
Nina are the dynamic duo.
So Steve and Nina
yes,
will
hello,
be,
everybody.
yeah, Steve and Nina will be leading.
I don't know if I can make the camera work.
It's
Just
okay.
look at my picture and imagine that's me.
Perfect. Just introduce yourselves. Just two or three sentences. It's fine.
Sure. Well, nice to meet everybody. I'm glad you guys are here for the ESP. Um, I personally learned how to bend spoons with my mind when I was 14, and I'm really looking forward to reading books at a distance. And nah, just kidding. All right, environmental stewardship. So, we've been tagged to be part of this and help out because we live right next to an old unlined landfill right next to the bay. And we're going to be conducting I don't know if it's the inaugural, but at least we're going to be conducting a walk this Sunday at 10 a.m., which I believe Susan or Geeta or whatever will be able to share the particulars with you. But we're going to be talking about it's going to be really neat. Actually, it's going to be a very high tide, so it's going to be like a 8, 9 or something. And then on top of that, we have um, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've got a lot of experience learning about a landfill, an online landfill, the challenges that it faces, and the reason why we got involved is because a developer purchased the landfill and they want to knock down all the buildings that are there and build it up to from just about 1 million square feet to about 3.3 million square feet, slashing setbacks and making buildings that loom over everything else about 150 feet above the um, surrounding area. So yeah, we're going to be walking along and talking, and it'll be neat because the Belmont Slough is right there, and there's all kinds of during the high tides, there's all kinds of like really neat wildlife that comes out and scavenges along the shore, which is cool to see. And probably not going to happen this time, but in December with the massive king tide that happened, there actually was overtopping where the bay sloshed into the detention areas. And that was quite thrilling actually to watch the bay pouring over the levee and into places where it shouldn't go. So yep, hope as many of you can come along as possible, and we'll do our best to make it a memorable King Tide walk this Sunday at 10
And
a.m.
I should say that Nina and Steve also joined the ESP program a couple of years ago. So, and they've been very active since then. Julie.
Did anybody have questions?
No, Julie, I was going to try to get Julie to unmute herself.
Okay, I'll unmute myself. Yes, I'm just very interested in ways to save the bay, so I'm here to help.
Okay, and your town that you live in?
Oh, I'm in Los Gatos.
In Los Gatos.
Yeah.
Very good. Just wanted to be sure that we complete the introductions. You missed the other people's introductions. So
Yes.
we will continue with our presentation. Let's see. I'm going to try to share, screen share. Do you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. So just continuing from where Susan left off, I thought I should I've introduced myself. I am an architect, and I found that I care more about the trees and the birds in the bay, maybe even more than beautiful buildings. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the value that the bay provides us, which Susan has touched on, but specifically on nature-based adaptations and why a regional approach is really important for us. So when I think about the bay, I think of all the millions of birds that fly through here because it's the Pacific Flyway and it's a major stopover on the flyway. And I think of all the birds that fly from the Arctic. They're sweeping through here twice a year, coming and going, and they're stopping to feed and get fat because they've lost about a third of all their weight flying and up to here from the Arctic. But there are many birds that live here in the bay all year too. And I think about all the creatures that live in the bay and all the values that it provides us, the open space. But fishing. But as Susan mentioned, there are many, many values that the bay provides us that people don't quite realize. When they're thinking of sea level rise, they think about the flooding that occurs on land and their infrastructure that may be at risk. But besides the ecosystems and being the largest stopover on the Pacific Flyway and a habitat for marine mammals and a nursery ground for many fish species, a lot of, I think 70% of California's fisheries depend on the bay for its nurseries. It also affects so many other things. Our weather around the bay, the cooling effect and the tempering effect of the bay, the purifying of the water because we dump all our storm water with all its toxics from the roads and the tires and the brake dust and the pesticides. All of that is cleaned by the bay as that water moves to the ocean. And Susan mentioned the sequester carbon. They're very fast-growing grasses, and when they die, they remain on the bay floor. And because it's anaerobic, they don't ever go away. So that carbon is there for hundreds of years. And of course, the beauty of the bay. But why is it a problem for us? Because of the erosion and the flooding of the shoreline, but because as the tidal wetlands are drowned, the habitat gets fragmented. And that's a really important issue for species to have contiguous habitat. We also have the fact that the salinity levels may change, which will affect, very, very minute changes in the salinity affect fish and wildlife. The groundwater pushing up the toxins, and then the fact that the first thing that people in our cities do is think about hard edges, seawalls that convert the bay, without its living shorelines into something akin to a bathtub, which is dead. So when people think about adapting to sea levels, they typically think about seawalls, levees, how to stop the water once and for all. Let's build a high enough levee so we don't have to think about it, as Susan pointed out, for the rest of this century. But even those have a lot of problems. As she mentioned, seismic liquefaction. Here's an image of a levee that experienced that. And, if the ground turns to mush, all those levees will slump and disappear. Flood walls can structurally fail. And we've got a lot of ground squirrels who are busy all year round making holes in our levees. So those are problems. So here was one last year. No, 2023. Do you remember Pajaro River, the Pajaro River? The levee failed and the whole of the city was flooded. This actually can happen because levees can fail. And things that look so solid, like the issue on the left, where they've got a hard edge and rock walls behind it. To the right is an image a few years later. Those waves are pesky waves, and they keep working away at taking away all those hard edges. So that erosion can continue to happen. So when we approached BCDC, we really wanted them to consider using nature-based solutions so that instead of fighting Mother Nature, we could work with Mother Nature. And that's what we wanted to talk to you about, is how do you increase resilience with these kinds of solutions. This is a slide that Susan showed you from the Estuary Institute, and it shows a range of nature-based solutions. So the first two, eelgrass and oyster beds, are ones that are submerged below water, so we don't see them. But the mud flats and the marshes are ones that you do see. So let's start with eelgrass. I like to start with that because we never see it. This is Richardson Bay in the north. There's Sausalito to the right and Tiburon to the left. And this is a protected area because it has these lush eelgrass meadows underwater. Now, these, if you really look within the eelgrass, there is a lot of life. These here are juvenile fish. And when every year the herring come in from the ocean and they lay their eggs on eelgrass. So here what you're seeing is after the herrings have laid their eggs, and what you see above the water is a frantic collection of birds trying to eat the eggs. The fish, the birds, the fishermen are all there for the herring themselves. And a lot of the sea life feeds on these herrings. So eelgrass meadows are an extremely important asset. And I want to show you a small video on it.
Seagrasses are declining worldwide at rates faster than coral reefs and rainforests, but we do overlook them. We don't talk about seagrass loss nearly enough. Seagrass is a land-based plant that's colonized the ocean.
The blades can be over a meter tall, so when you dive down or snorkel down into the seagrass bed, you can kind of get lost in it, really. They are often considered nursery grounds. So that means that they provide habitat, both food and refuge for small critters. Seagrass is a really important habitat for an entire food web.
And they're incredibly diverse. Think of an area of seagrass that's about as big as a basketball. When we collect that seagrass and look at it very carefully, we find between 5 and 20 different species living on the seagrass. Animals move among the meadows. So what this means, if we wanted to manage or protect or conserve the biodiversity of a seagrass meadow, we couldn't just protect a single meadow. We would need to recognize that the animals that live in that meadow are being sustained by their populations in meadows that may be a few kilometers away or even farther.
So our larger scale plans are to understand the entire food web in seagrass systems and drivers of change to these systems.
Worldwide, the major threats are nutrient pollution and habitat destruction. When we build structures on the shoreline, whether they're docks or marinas or seawalls, that often changes the oceanography in such ways that seagrasses can't persist.
Getting a sense of what we have here and the factors that are affecting change currently and into the future is really important for understanding how to respond to these development pressures and how to mitigate change in these important habitats going forward.
So, are we back to the slideshow? I hope. I think. Okay. Hopefully we're back to the slideshow now. Okay. So the other submerged item that we never see are oysters, oyster beds. And the bay used to have a lot of oysters. You know, this is evidenced by the huge ceremonial shell mounds that the Indians left behind, almost all around the bay. And almost all of them have been ground up by industry to make concrete. But the gold rush hydraulic mining, which took place upriver in the gold country, that brought tons and tons of sediment down to the bay. And that clouded up the pristine waters, making it difficult for good quality oysters. So I'm still waiting for the day when we can once again celebrate oyster season, just like crab season. But that is going to take a while. So they do have an enormous ecological value, and we really need them in the bay. 50 gallons of water a day, each oyster can clarify and clean. So they would be a very valuable partner in keeping the bay alive. They also are used for making reefs. So here's an experiment that was done in Richmond's Point Pinot. They used actually artificial concrete structures so that oysters had something to attach to, because the bay used to have very rocky shorelines, but with the bay fill, everything has been filled up. There are no rocks left. And with all the sediment that came down from the gold rush, there's about 3 feet of bay mud in Suisun Bay from all of that sediment. So this was an experiment to introduce rocks so that oysters would latch onto them. And as you can see, they're creating an artificial reef in order to break up wave action. So if you can break the wave action up with oyster reefs, then you can have marshes or eelgrass meadows behind them, between the shore and the reef. And if you ever have been in an area where there's a coral reef, the wave action on the shore is extremely subdued as a result of that, which means that your levees don't have to be that tall because you don't have waves. So here's another experiment in San Rafael shoreline, where you can see the line of oyster reefs. This was fairly successful. And in fact, we have several areas around the bay. I had a map, which I'm not going to share, which show that there are several areas where they have attempted to bring oysters back. This is going to be a continuous process with the BCDC's regional shoreline adaptation process, which we hope will be taken up in different areas where shorelines need protection from wave action as part of their resilience. There's oh dear, I think it's going to show you a short ad. This video shows another use for oysters where they will be able to attach to existing rocky shorelines. Like if you have to have a rocky shoreline, like a lot of San Francisco does, then they will be able to attach oysters to that if the rocky shoreline that is useful for them. So let me, I'm sorry. I don't know why we're seeing this silly ad, but hopefully we can skip it in a minute.
For us,
I'm getting hungry.
As long as they're the best.
Stop.
Best.
Okay, here we go.
A project along San Francisco Bay is merging architecture with wildlife conservation.
Spencer is back with the details for us.
Okay, Kristen and Dan, we're now about a year into the experiment at Crissy Field, and the early results are providing a potential blueprint for the way we might build in the future in the face of climate change.
It's heavy.
Wildlife ecologist Jonathan Young is sloshing into the waters of the Presidio's newest tidal marsh to see the difference a year makes. His focus, oysters, now making themselves at home in a variety of prefabricated pods and panels put into service beginning last November.
The goal, again, is to maximize oyster recruitment, so get them to come and settle onto these panels to grow.
The project essentially began with the opening of Quartermaster Reach, a restored tidal marsh stretching inland from the edges of Crissy Field and connected by a culvert system, allowing salty bay tides to mix with a historic freshwater stream. Young showed off raised panels temporarily removed for inspection during a recent dive. Like the dome-shaped pods placed in the marsh itself, the panels provide the native Olympia oysters a home to attach themselves to along the cement walls of the culvert.
All those are oysters, 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 oysters. All those are oysters. And that's the goal. We want more oysters.
The oyster introduction is actually an ongoing experiment, not just in urban ecology, but design evolution, and in the way we adapt our cities and coastline to climate change.
The textured fiberglass panels were specially designed, created with the help of Evan Jones and Margaret Ikeda, and designers from the California College of the Arts.
I think it's really part of a very new way of thinking about infrastructure, design, and ecology together.
You know, the San Francisco seawall, they're going to be protecting both airports. The Port of Oakland is looking for different strategies. So this kind of work definitely informs.
Young says the Presidio team is still learning about the physics of the tidal marsh, which areas the oysters will thrive in, and what other species might be benefiting along with them. And as renovation projects continue along Crissy Field, the marsh will evolve as a kind of living petri dish, potentially giving ecologists and engineers innovative designs that can be duplicated around San Francisco Bay.
Things are changing, and we need to adapt. So these are opportunities to use science to advance our knowledge.
Indeed, we need to adapt. A number of cities around the country, including Seattle, are experimenting with urban designs meant to bolster local fish and wildlife populations. Dan and Kristen?
Fascinating. Nice job, Spencer. Really interesting work being done.
Okay. We do need to move along. And so I think Susan has talked about mudflats and marshes, and we can see the how effective it is to have a marsh in front of a shoreline where you don't get wave action. And the sedimentation, as the sea level rises, naturally marshes grow upwards, but they take time. And where the Army Corps is dredging, they're dredging all the ship channels. All that sediment is currently thrown away and at the Farallon Islands, but we're starting now to look at ways to use this sediment in order to restore the marshes and keep them growing. So this is a map of where the marshes used to be on the left and where we are now today. And the red areas, the little red areas, are areas where where the marshes may need to migrate, as we need space for marshes to move to, as some marsh areas will drown. So one thing that we'd like to really stress is that wetlands restoration is just like development. It provides a lot of very good jobs in addition to providing new habitat and protecting ecosystems. So as I mentioned, the red areas down here in the South Bay, there's a lot of opportunities. And in the North Bay, there is a lot of marsh areas. So there are some opportunities for marsh migration. I will skip through this. I will skip this issue on development pressures. Oops. Oh, I need to stop this. Stop. And we've talked about the ecotone levees. They provide, here's a good example of wastewater treatment where the wastewater treatment is put through a very gentle sloped levee where if water travels through the root zone, when it comes out into the marshes, it turns out to be 99% clear because a lot of the wastewater currently still has a lot of nitrogen nutrients in it. And that is a problem because we have these red tides where algae blooms kill hundreds of fish and wildlife. We have a similar one in Palo Alto. That's a pilot horizontal levee. So it's this, and it has the same basic idea of running water through a gentle slope into marshes and into the mudflats. Oops. And finally, there are beaches which provide protection. Now, these are not your, umbrella, sun umbrella type of beaches. Here's an island which was converted into a beach to protect these houses along the shoreline here. So the nature-based adaptation should be the first consideration, and we've talked about a lot of them: the marshes, the mudflats, the oysters, the eelgrass, horizontal levees, the beaches, and the migration zones. So these are the various kinds of adaptation features that we would like you to keep in mind. I just wanted to spell them out in greater detail. So, Shruti, you're the MC. I wanted to, I didn't go through the entire presentation because we really want time to have the action items.
Yeah, so I'll bring it up, in the interest of time. If we can just quickly go over the action items and then also talk about our outing. I apologize. I guess this is the king tides are happening this weekend, so which is why it was scheduled. I know it's not enough time for all of you to just plan, but if you can make it, please do attend. With that,
the action item is I just put it in the chat.
Okay.
What we would like to do, if we can, is there's a letter to BCDC, which recognizes, okay, I can, maybe I can screen share the letter, screen share. Okay. So it's basically thanks the commissioners on BCDC and the staff who worked very hard on this. And honestly, when they started out, they just said the bay was a beautiful place. But we worked very hard with them to bring them around 180 degrees. It was kind of like trying to turn a tanker in the ocean, but we did, and we were very, very, very successful. Thankfully, based on people like Shivi, who spoke up, sent letters, signed petitions, talked to them. We embedded ourselves in their process, and they have put nature-based adaptation as being one of the very important issues in keeping the bay alive. And they recognize the ecosystems of the bay. So this is just a thank you letter. I've put it in the chat. It's easy to send it. You would just send it to public comment at BCDC. Please personalize it. You can add a sentence or two in the beginning to introduce yourself and why you think the bay is really important to keeping it alive. And this is important that the commissioners know that they've done something really important in terms of future generations. So Shruti, did you want people to do it now, or should we?
I'm thinking, yeah, in the interest of time, we will work on it. And I guess, I'll send out an email to everybody tomorrow, and we can attach this as a sample letter. There was one other action item, I think, that was pressing. Sue, if you want to go.
Yes, this is an action item regarding supporting a ban on artificial turf in Santa Clara County on county property. And the meeting, the Board of Supervisors meeting will most likely be on January the 28th. So we really need people to send out this letter in the form of emails, or you can call, their office. And also what would be really helpful is if you show up online on the evening, of the meeting. or the meeting actually could be in the morning. We're not even sure if it's going to be in the morning or in the evening, but we'll let you know. And make like a 2-minute public comment, okay, urging them to adopt a ban on artificial turf. Artificial turf is one of the most destructive types of plastics. And the turf industry is fighting to spread, the installation of this horrible, plastic substance. So let me just show you the letter. Okay, if you have any questions.
We should say that the very next session is actually on plastic pollution prevention.
Yeah, but we have to do
this
the
meeting
action
happens
now.
to be.
Yes, the February ESP webinar is on artificial turf, but we need to do the action item now because the Board of Supervisors in Santa Clara will be meeting at the end of this month, right? On the 28th, most likely, to vote. So that vote will be very important. If we succeed in getting them to vote for a ban, then, I think ripple effects from that will be tremendous, okay? A lot of cities in
I was gonna say some people are gonna start dropping off, and I'm afraid we haven't given the information about where to meet on Sunday.
Yeah, can you put the meeting place in the chat, Shruti, please?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up these.
Well, we need to display the.
Oh, okay. Can you display that?
Yeah, so this is, yeah, it has the.
And Shruti, you can send it to people as well tomorrow.
Yeah, so I'll be sharing this along with our most important action items. The hope was we work on it together here, but in the interest of time, I guess if all of you can send those letters, the emails.
Okay, this is then we're meeting in Redwood Shores, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
at the intersection of Island Drive and Bridge Parkway at 10
I
o'clock.
know exactly where that is because I lived in Redwood Shores, but I think a lot of people may not know.
And the other thing we wanted to point out is I put my email address in the chat again. If you could email me, if you do plan to come, we want to make sure we don't take off without you. It will be a pretty easy walk, probably 45 minutes, with a little stopping and chatting. So an hour total. And then, we'll walk to a nearby cafe for, a coffee and donut or bagel or something on Sierra Club. We'll pick up the tab.
Yeah, the QR code here has the drop-in location, so the exact location. So this is nicely done. Thank you, Stephen.
Yes, Steve, this looks great. It's not far from the library, actually, if you know where that is.
Yes.
True. And it's right along the Belmont Slough, which is a historic slough, it's a very nice walk, and we can look over and see Foster City as well.
If people get lost, they can't find us, we should really give them a phone number. That's absolutely essential.
So I put a copy of the flyer in the chat. So if anybody wants to just download it from there, you can keep it. You don't have to try to copy everything down now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Shruti will include it in the follow-up tomorrow.
How about just meeting,
we have this meeting. This place has worked on for many meetings. This place works really well.
So it works, okay. Because
yeah,
I was thinking
that's the only public parking along the site. The rest of the site is Longfellow property.
Yeah.
You mean, what about parking in the library parking lot? Is that
you can park here? This is fine. There's plenty of parking.
Yeah. If we park here, then we may get a chance to take a look over at Area H, which will be our ace in the hole. Area H, a mitigation bank.
So it's at 9:30, right?
10 o'clock.
Okay, 10 o'clock.
And this is Sunday.
This Sunday, yes.
No longer
Sunday.
Yeah, it's no longer
Sunday, yeah. Sunday. Time and tide wait for no person. So we're gonna have to. We'll get there. We'll hang out a bit and say hello, and then we'll get a walking. It probably won't be more than maybe a mile total, or about 45 minutes to an hour. So it should be pretty easy. If you look at the flyer, it says bring cameras and binoculars because you see lots of neat stuff. And even though the UV's fairly weak right now. It's been pretty warm and sunny, so you might want to bring sun protection and potentially water. And then, yeah, afterwards, uh, they're going to buy you brunch someplace. So come along, walk the Bay Trail, learn a bunch of stuff, and then have a lovely brunch.
That would be great. If we look forward to meeting whoever can come. Is there, if people know right now that they plan to come, we'd like to know right now. So actually, can you stop, Shruti? Can you stop? So how many people think that they might be able to do it?
Yeah, can you raise your hands? I can, yeah, I'm going to raise my hands.
Yay. Yay. Eileen. All right.
Okay.
That gives us some actual experts too, instead of just like enthusiastic amateurs. So that's great.
Murali, welcome. You have joined us late, so introduce yourself, please, before we all leave.
Yeah, hi Geeta. I am Murli Srinivasan. I am council member of Sunnyvale. I am a big fan of ESP. I went through this in 2018, 2017.
I know before the pandemic, I remember
Before
you.
pandemic. Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to remember the days, but I just wanted to refresh all the things I learned there. So thank you very much.
Well, welcome indeed. And you are an inspiration also to the rest of us because
Oh,
you've actually
no,
gone
no,
and become a council member.
no, other way around. And then thanks, Shruti, for sending me the URL. Unfortunately, I opened the URL just now. I was in another meeting. Sorry,
Oh.
I so
Well, it's been recorded, Murali, so tomorrow you'll get.
absolutely. That's what I went through other recordings of previous years ESPs.
Great.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
Kaylee Collins was
Yeah,
also a late joiner.
thanks for doing this. I want to appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you for being such an enthusiastic participant, Murali.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I show the
Don't
letter?
mind just stopping the recording. I just realized we are still recording.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay. We can, can I show the letter now?
Sure.
For the action item. So this is the letter that we encourage people to send to the Santa Clara Board of Supervisors in email form. And as I said, you can also call and please try to show up. How many of you here are interested in helping out with this ban on artificial turf?
Okay.
Oh, great.
I'm interested.
Great. And especially for people who live in Santa Clara County, right? Your voice will be quite important. So I think we have several people, right?
We should make a ban like that in Foster City. It looks like Foster City turning into an artificial turf city in a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we tried.
lead it, Ina.
We tried, Ina.
Okay.
Susan, I'd
We'll
love
talk
to
more
connect
about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to connect, Susan.
Yeah, we can carry on this conversation, in the near future. So this is the simple letter. It just says, and here's the email address. Dear Santa Clara County Board President Otto Lee and supervisors, I urge you to support a ban on artificial turf with no exceptions on all county-owned land, including schoolyards, playgrounds, athletic fields, and landscaping. I support a ban because, and you put your reasons here, we will give you a list of reasons along with this, see below. Sincerely, your name here. And if you're a Santa Clara County resident, be sure to mention your city or your Santa Clara County district, which you can find by clicking onto this. So it's very easy. I think this should take you about 10 minutes at the most. And it would include going through the list. I'm not going to go through the list of reasons.
Ina has her hand up.
Yeah, Ina, can I? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Ina.
I'm sorry, I think I just forgot to take off my take down my hand. I don't want to disrupt the conversation.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I think we can quickly wrap up with any questions, and so we can share this anyway with the email.
Okay.
So people
Okay,
have
cool.
to send this. And yeah, if I can quickly mention, previously before joining ESP, I was just had this impression that what will one email change things? But since I've been there, and I remember Geeta telling, sometimes it just takes one or two person to really put it out there, and then it, becomes a big issue. So anything that you can do will definitely be beneficial to this campaigns.
Yes,
Great.
absolutely.
Do you want to stop screen sharing?
Okay.
Okay.
Hold on
Thanks.
for a sec.
Okay.
Geeta, I had a quick question for you.
Yes.
You mentioned like 4 or 5 nature-based solutions, right? Are they like are there more, or would you happen to have some, pointers to reading materials that I could look at to
I would
learn more
definitely,
about them?
yes, Shivi, if you're interested, the Adaptation Atlas, if you Google Adaptation Atlas, that'll give you a wealth of information. And basically, it's an atlas which, as Susan pointed out, it goes around the bay and divides it into different segments based on what nature-based adaptation they feel would work best in that area, because you have a rocky shoreline like San Francisco, and then you've got like the South Bay, which is very, very shallow. It's full of salt ponds. So that's a really interesting resource. It may be more information than you want, but it's definitely interesting.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any more questions, comments? So we look forward to meeting, hopefully most of you, on Sunday at 10 a.m. Did anybody miss the meeting place? Shruti, you're going to send it to people, right? The meeting place.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
and it's
Thank you.
also on the chat here.
Also, if I may, if anybody has any specific things they want to learn, I guess it's a little late to mention them now, but write them down, bring them along, and we'll see if we can't address them on the walk. You're gonna have a lot of firepower in this walk, it looks like, so they'll be able to answer all kinds of questions.
Okay.
And one last thing I would say is that, and Shivi, this might work for you, is Bay Alive. So, if you go Sierra Club Bay Alive, if you Google that, you'll find a website that has a lot of resources, a lot of information about nature-based adaptation and, other issues related to keeping the bay alive, since it is a lively campaign. Thanks to people like you.
I think that's a great question. So maybe you should include that in recommended reading, because I was also thinking for erosion control, what can be planned along the shoreline? So maybe, yeah. So Geeta, if you can share, I'll include that in the email as well. If
Okay, we'll put that the links to that. Okay, great. That and Adaptation Atlas and the RCEP. No, not the RCEP. That's 200 pages long. Okay.
Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Yep.
Thank you. And we ran over a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night. I'll see you on Sunday.
Yes, Ina. Look forward to it.
Soon. Bye.
Leave. So, escape.
Thank you, Sue, for hosting.
Well, thank you, Shruti. Thank everyone.
Yeah, I'm too bad. Yeah, I'm gonna miss the King Tide walk, but hopefully the next King Tide. I
think it's only in San Mateo, right? I've only been to King Tide events in San Mateo.
Well, I don't even know when the next one is. So anyway.
It was usually in San Mateo. Okay. So
Thank
have a
you,
good
Steve.
weekend,
All right.
Shruti. Thank you.
Okay, have a good
Bye.
one.